this video, I'm going to show you some of the features of working with a VM. So I have a Windows 7 machine open on my Mac OS X host machine. So on my host machine, or you think of it, my machine under my desk, I have a Macintosh machine running El Capitan, which is the OS X operating system. And then I had VMware Fusion running. VMware Fusion is the equivalent to VMware Workstation in the Windows world. In order to work with VMs in Mac world, you use VMware Fusion. And so I have a Windows 7 VM running on top of my El Capitan operating system. And I could open multiple operating systems at the same time. If I wanted to launch Windows 10, if I wanted to launch a Linux box, I could have them all running on top of my operating system in virtual machines. And then I would just, space them out so that I could see them. In VMware Workstation on the PC, it's a little bit nicer because you have tabs where you can tab through the different virtual machines that you have open on the system. So it's just a little bit different setup. So everything that I show you, you can do in VMware Fusion right now, you can also do with your VMware and Workstation. The menu choices just might be slightly different. So to start, I'm going to talk about networking. So I'm going to go ahead and on this Windows 7 machine, open up a command prompt. I'm going to try to make it a little bit fairly small how the operating system has it set up right now, but if I do an IP config, you can see that I have an IP address of 172.16.17.132. And so I'm going to talk about networking first. In VMware Fusion, if you go to virtual machine, you go to network adapter, you have three choices with your network adapter. You can put it in NAT or bridged, or you can put it in host only. And so if it's in host only, it's in what's called like an isolated network. It won't be able to access the internet. It's just going to be able to access the other virtual machines that are set up on its own, also on its host only network with the internal private IP address. If you set it in NAT or bridged, you're going to be able to access the internet. These two, one shares the IP address with your host machine and the other will get an IP address from your DHCP server, whether you're hosting your own DHCP server or you're going out to your ISP to get one. And so that's the difference between them. So I'll show you right now, since I'm in host only, if I tried to open up Internet Explorer and I tried to go to google.com, you'll see it'll try to connect, but it won't be able to because I don't have an external IP address. Now, if I change my network adapter and I go to virtual machine, I go to network adapter, and I go to, let's say, NAT, for instance, and then I do a new IP config, you'll see that now I've gained an IP address of 192.168.232.135. So you can see how it changed from that 172 network. And if I go back to my browser and I try to go to google.com, Google's webpage will load. And so that's the difference between NAT and bridge being able to access the internet and host only having an isolated network. So there's a lot of times where we want host only. So when I do my penetration testing or if I'm doing malware analysis, I wouldn't want that to accidentally get out to the internet or for me to accidentally port scan a machine that I don't have written authorization to do a port scan against. So I may run it in host only to make sure I don't accidentally make a mistake and type in the wrong IP address and be able to get access to the internet. So host only kind of creates that isolated network. So if you notice what I did, this was in Fusion. I went up to virtual machine, I went to network adapter, and I could change it there. In VMware Workstation on a PC, it's the same menu. It's under VM, but you have to go down to the bottom to go network settings, and then click on your network adapter, and you'll see that you've got choices on the right-hand side for NAT, bridged, or host only, or to create a custom network. The next thing I'm going to talk about is snapshots. And so I'm going to do it again. I'm going to go to virtual machine, and this time I'm going to click on snapshots, and that's located in the same location on a PC. You go to VM and then snapshots, and I'm going to open the snapshot manager. And you can see right now I don't have any snapshots. I have the current state as powered on. I could take a snapshot right now, and I would say this was the snapshot at, let's say it's 9 a.m. on 10, 12, 16, whatever day I took it on, or let's say 12, 13. I can do it with a straight clock. Let's say 4 p.m. because it's really is 4 p.m. down here in the clock on here. So let's say at 4 p.m. on 10/16, I'm going to take a snapshot, and it will create a snapshot of how the machine exists right now. So this was the current state, and this was the snapshot as of that time. And so what will happen is if I'm going to go out, I'm going to do something on the machine. I'm going to open up Notepad, There it is. And I'm going to create a document and just save it to the document, to the desktop. So this is a test. And I'm going to say File, Save As. I'm going to save it to the desktop. And I'm going to call it Test. Okay, and so you see that file creates, and I could go ahead and create a new text document called AACC, and let's say I create a new text document called Documents, Document. So I threw some files up there to show you that now I've got some new files on my desktop, and I can go back to Snapshot Manager. And I can take a new snapshot at this point in time, and I'll call this is the 410 snapshot. And I'll take it. And you see now I have multiple snapshots. I have the current state, I have the 410 snapshot, and I have a snapshot from 4 o'clock. And so what snapshots let you do is I'm going to go ahead and close out of that. As you can see, my documents are there. If I go to Virtual Machine, I go to Snapshots, and I restore back to another snapshot. So I click back to the 4 p.m. snapshot, and I say I want to restore from there. It'll say, are you sure? It's going to discard any changes that you've made and say, go ahead. You'll see it saved currently what I was doing to that old snapshot, and now it's reverting back to the old one at 4 o'clock. You can see the tree kind of changes. And so now I'm back to the 4 o'clock snapshot where there were no files on my desktop, where it was that clean install. And so you have the ability to snap back to old snapshots or go forward to new ones. So if I went to snapshots again, and let's say, I didn't mean to go back, that I actually needed those documents, I could go back to this snapshot, save it, and I can go back to the 410 snapshot. And so you can see now already on the desktop that those documents have appeared again. So in the real world, how does this help? How do we use these? How do we typically use these snapshots is, let's say you've taken this even for your personal use and you've loaded all the software that you use onto this virtual machine. So I've loaded Microsoft Word, I've loaded Excel, I've loaded Wireshark, because I use that for packet analysis, and I've loaded all my software. And so I might take a snapshot after I've done that. I've got it into a great state of what I like. That way, if anything were to happen down in the future, the system crashed, or I installed a piece of software that ended up having a virus on it that caused a virus on my machine, I could go into my snapshots and I could restore it back to a point in which the virus wasn't on it. Okay, so you'd want snapshots because you wouldn't necessarily always want to go back to the fresh install of the system, because then you'd lose the fact that you had documents saved on it, or you'd lose the software that you loaded onto it and you'd have to reload all that software. In the professional world, we use it to test different things. So I may have a system in the virtual machine that I copy a real system to, the current state, and I load a new patch that maybe comes out from Microsoft, and I want to see how that interacts with different systems on the network. I may install that patch onto the virtual machine, see how it does. If for some reason things go awry and it doesn't work out so well, I can always snapshot it back to the state in which that it was running well before I put that patch on there. So a lot of times virtual machines in the real world are used for testing purposes. If you have any questions about virtual machines, feel free to send me an email and let me know.